Let's create a skeletal rig out of joints and bones the old school way, so you understand how the whole thing works. The whole process is going to teach you how to have a fully custom skeleton that you can then use to pose your character however you want, or to animate him, or achieve some shapes that you would struggle to create by hand instead of deforming with a skeleton to make it feel more natural. So this is going to be a two-part series of tutorials. First one will include the creation of the skeleton and the naming of it, and then binding it to geometry. And the second part will include the painting of the skin weights to achieve a more specified influence of on your geometry, and also setting up eye gaze so you can get some realistic movement of the skeleton. So let's get into it. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this. So the first thing that we want to do is make sure our mesh is placed the way we want it, centered on the bottom of the grid, that it has its transformations and history frozen and deleted, so we can now start adding it. Also named in the outliner. I named this one the giant guy. So let's go to our front view. If your model is symmetrical, it's going to be pretty easy to do the whole thing, because you can create one side and then mirror it to the other, so that's pretty convenient. So what we want to do is go to skeleton and then create joints. Now when you press anywhere by left clicking, when you've selected the great joint, you will see this yellow thing appearing, and if you keep left clicking, you will start creating a chain of bones. If you find them to be too big or small, you can go to display and then animation and then joint size, and then you get this slider that you can now edit the way you want your joint size to be. So you can position the joint where you want. Let's make the first, this would be the, I guess, the right hip. Yeah, the right hip bone. And then we proceed to add new bones by having selected the great joint. This place here is reserved for the last tool you use, so you may refer to that point, or I think it's G by default as a hotkey. So the next bone we are going to need is the knee of the right leg. So we can hold V or X. V if we want to snap it to some specific vertex. You will see now that it's snapped to a vertex, but you don't really need that. But it can be, because this face is simply a rough sketch thing. So if you've had one bone selected and then added another, they get connected to each other. And if you have one floating like this, you can select, for example, this chain, and then shift left click on the floating one and press P, and you will see now that this thing got parented to that joint. So the first chain you select is the child, and then you select the parent and press P to make it its parent. So now we have our leg, and what we're basically trying to do with the skeleton rig is create an actual skeleton that's going to move our geometry around. So what you want to do is position your bones the way they're positioned in real life as much as you can, but that's not as strict. So let's add another one to the foot, again holding V and then placing it somewhere inside, and then parenting it to our ankle. So now we have the whole leg, which is awesome. So let's now make the hip bone. I'll hold X and press somewhere in the middle, so we get snapped to the middle. and then child our leg to the hip. So we now have the right leg. Now if we go to mirror joints, we will get the left leg as well, and it will connect to the root bone, which is nice. But you might want to specify on which axis you're going to mirror the whole thing, because you have various options, and you select it by going to skeleton, mirror joints, and then press the square for options and select the plane of your mirroring. So in this case we want the Y and Z plane to be the one we mirror across. So you can see here in the bottom left we have the Y and Z, which is the plane that we want to mirror the leg joints across. So it's by default like that. So let's press it, and now we have the mirrored legs. Cool. So now we already have some hierarchy in our outliner, and I prefer to name it immediately. So let's call this the hip right, R for right, and then hip L for left, knee left, and foot left, and then toes left. So it can be a tedious process, and there are other ways to do this, but let's do it the old school way. Okay, so now we have the legs. What we now need is, let's check, yeah, it's positioned correctly. What we now need are some spine bones, and depending on the complexity of your model, you're going to choose the amount of spine joints that you need. Let's add, like, I don't know, 2 and 3 for the collarbone here. Okay, so this is the middle of our model. Now that we have the spine, we want to add the so-called clavicles, which are usually placed somewhere like this, and it's going to connect your arm to your collarbone. Actually, that is the collarbone, but I meant the spine joint. So now we have the shoulder of our left arm. So we can add the elbow of the left arm, the wrist of the left arm. Switching between the views is crucial, so you don't have to redo the positioning constantly when you don't want to. So one of the most boring parts of the whole thing is creating the fingers. And there are various ways people approach this. We will add knuckles here. So we have our 4 knuckles. We're going to parent them. Actually, no, we're going to do a different approach. We're going to have one joint over here that's going to like represent the palm of the hand. around here, yeah. And then we're going to child everything to that joint. And then we will yeah, I guess that's fine. We can reorder it later. Um, we will child the palm joint to our wrist, and you can probably look at some references how other people do rigs, but I found this method to work for me whenever I want to pose the character or something like that. So now we want to add another one for the thumb. This is the first joint of the thumb actually. And let's do the same for the fingers. We're doing the rough creation of joints, and we will place them correctly once we have all of them. So the order of placement should go from the parent to the child. So you can't, if you moved the child where you wanted and then moved its parent, it's going to move the child as well. So you can't. You have to go from the parent. So let's position this parent here, and then this one. It's good already, and then the child. Same goes for the middle finger. Again, this doesn't need to be super specific because these are only the coordinates from which the influence of the weight painting is going to take place. But it should be as close as possible because the rotation is going to influence how the affected vertices are going to behave. The best thing to do is to study the human skeleton so you know where to place things. Since it's pretty much the same, you want to replicate the simplified skeleton basically. Okay, cool. So now that we have the left hand, let's name it, actually the left arm, by pressing shift and then on the plus in the outliner you get to collapse everything. So this is the most boring part, naming the joints, of course. So spine 1, spine 2, spine 3, clavicle left, shoulder left, elbow, wrist left, palm left, pinky left 1, pinky left 2, pinky left 3, pinky left 4. Horrible, I know. Ring left 1, ring left 2, 3, ring left 4. So you can name them however you want. You might need to follow some standard or something like that. You can also create a script to do stuff like this for you, but let's do it just so you know specifically how it happens. Let's do it in this order. So index left 1, index left 2, index left 3, and 4. And now we have the thumb left 1. Cool. Now we have the whole arm. All we need to do now is mirror it. And then when you name the thing, now when you have named one side, you can replace parts of the name or the whole name with something. So let's say search for L and replace with R. So when you press apply, you get the whole thing, but named as right instead of left. So that's pretty convenient, and it's case sensitive, so that's very cool. So now you got your hand, shoulders. Now let's look at the whole rig for now. We have our basically pretty much everything. Now let's add the head, which is missing. Let's do it from the front again. Create joint. We need one neck for the bending of the whole neck thing. And let's also add the eyes so we can see how we would rig the eyes. So what we want here is to have one joint that when we rotate it, it can rotate our eye left or right. And we want to child that to our neck. Okay. Cool. Same if we wanted to do with mouth and eyelids and stuff like that, but the model is not complex enough for that, so let's keep it like this. Let's now name this thing neck, head, eye right, eye left. Cool. That's our whole rig. Now that we have all the joints, what we want to do is the process called binding the whole rig to our mesh so we can have the control over the body. So the way we do this is by selecting the root of our mesh, actually the root of our skeleton, selecting the giant guy or whatever your mesh name is, and then going to rigging, skin, bind skin. Boom, you now have a rigged character. You can do whatever you want now with it. Let's see how this thing works for the eye. It works horribly because it's not painted, but I think that we did the bind skin thing roughly did the binding, and then you after that have to specify exactly which part of the geometry you want each joint to influence, and we're going to do that in the next video.